Alright, what's going on, guys? Welcome everybody to another video on the channel. Hope you're having a good weekend so far. Today, I've got the top 10 easy pro tips for you guys to implement that will instantly help you get better at PUBG. Now, this video is going to be a little bit more geared towards newer players, as a lot of new players jumping into the game. The skill ceiling is obviously very high right now, and it's pretty brutal for new players trying to get acquainted in a game like PUBG, so this guide is specifically meant for players like you, if that fits your description, and it's going to make your transition into the game a little bit easier and should make your entire process more smooth and enjoyable. So, and again, even though this video is a little bit more designed for newer players, even if you're an experienced PUBG player and you're just looking to get a little bit more tips and tricks, then this video actually might surprise you. And if this guide does end up helping out at all, I would really appreciate a like rating. That is all I ask in return. And of course, if you guys want to see more content like this, please make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new. We're almost at 300,000 subs, which is insane. And if you guys want to go follow me on Twitch, I'm streaming every single day. Links in the description below. But anyways, guys, let's get into this. So coming today at the number 10 spot is going to be to mark the plane path on your map at the beginning of each game. And you can do this a couple of different ways. You can draw a line from the original plane path to the end of it, and then you can use this new feature in the game that draws a line that will stay there permanently, or you can mark it with some sort of special pin of the end plane path. Either way you want to do it. The point of this technique is to give yourself a sort of radius of where most of the players in your match are going to be, because depending on the plane path is going to give you a context clues for concentration of the players and how they landed. You can expect a reasonable amount of players to jump in and around the left or right side of the plane, so they're very unlikely to be near the bottom of the map or the farthest away from the plane path is, thus making that the most safe option. Just good to have on hand to give you the most context clues about where players are likely to be, and so that's going to greatly influence your decision making, and the more you implement this and understand where players are probably going to be at any given point in the match, then it's going to make your experience that much better. Tip number 9 is going to sound a little bit obvious, but it's a very easy mistake for newer players to make, and this is especially important when you're hot dropping. You need to prioritize getting a gun over everything. It might be really tempting when you land, especially with a lot of other players, to grab the level 3 bag first, or to grab some kind of grenade or first aid kit, but especially when you're playing with a lot of players and, you know, every second counts, you need to prioritize a weapon over everything, and then you can pick up the scraps later. When it comes down to it, you should even prioritize weapons over picking up armor, because armor is no good if you don't have a firearm to fight your enemy. I know that may sound obvious to, you know, more experienced players, but it's not inherently obvious what loot you should be picking up immediately when you drop in. But especially if you're new to the game and you're hot dropping a lot, make sure to pick up a gun first and then go for armor second. It can help you win a lot of gunfights, especially in the early game. Tip number 8 is going to be to change your preference settings in terms of your crosshairs and also the way you use your reticles. So all of the reticles in the game, for the most part, the red dots and the holographics, have different options as far as their aesthetics. Now, personally, I just prefer the standard red dot, but you can change these to whatever you like, and even the color variations. And you can also change these completely by going into your settings and changing your color blind. Now, this is going to change the color of the blood of other enemies and also some elements on your map. Main purpose to change colorblind settings is to make the enemy blood a little bit easier to spot, knowing you exactly when you got a hit. And then you can also change your reticle color, and this can be made any color you like. There's not one that is objectively better, but what I will say is don't make it too bright or too dark color. That's going to get lost within the background of a map. Your reticle should be easy to see at all times, and up against pretty much any background, it should be very distinct and, you know, able to track a target no matter what the color or background shifts into. Again, you can toy around with these settings a little bit to find your personal preference, but those are the fundamentals to keep in mind about it. You can also change your preferences for how you want your guns to behave upon picking them up. So I recommend setting pretty much all of them to full auto, especially ARs and SMGs, so that in the early game you pick up a gun and you're not automatically fumbling around with trying to put it in full auto. Adjusting it in the settings will save you time in game and should do it right away. Tip number 7 is going to be explaining how airdrops work. More specifically, how the algorithm is based so that they land in a certain path and where to expect them on the map. Now, generally with every single airdrop, the plane is going to have a spawn location somewhere on the map and a set route. And in that set route is going to drop either 1 or 2 airdrops in that path. And basically, if this path is going straight down the middle of the map, the plane upon spawning always has to drop the crates within the current safe zone. Now, sometimes you'll see a plane drop a drop that is not inside the current white zone, and this can happen for a couple of reasons. The plane spawns in, and if the circle pops after the plane has already spawned, then you might get the situation where a drop actually lands outside of the white zone. This means the time of the spawning of the plane and the popping of the zone were a little bit out of sync. So that's why you might get one that lands outside of the current save zone. Now, it's important to know that because this will give you a better indication on probably where a drop is going to land, help you to predict them more, and then to cover them more effectively with smoke grenades or just setting up a little bit earlier, whatever the case is. It's not exactly obvious, but it is really important to understand how they work. Number 6 is going to be to use your lean mechanic in context. You don't want to spam it all the time, especially with the current changes to it. Now, leaning in context is great because it allows you to hide a little bit more of your body, maybe making your enemy miss an important headshot, but it does, especially at a distance and for long extended sprays, actually hurt your recoil pattern a little bit. So it's better just to fire straight on, especially if your target is like, I don't know, more than 20 meters away. However, as you play the game more and get more experience, it's going to become more obvious about when you should utilize your lean and when to just fire straight on. Fundamentally, leaning is your most effective tool of keeping your body a little bit safer in gunfights when you have cover to work with. Other than that, it's not something that should be spammed every single gunfight. Tip number 5 is going to be to try and have good weapon synergy. Now, especially if you are new to the game, you might not know exactly what weapons to run and what is good on it as far as attachments. And if you want a more detailed explanation of that kind of stuff, I've made plenty of weapon guides on this channel that will give you, the utmost knowledge on that sort of stuff. But good weapon synergy is more important than just having a good weapon in general. Things that I always recommend pairing together are things like ARs and DMRs, especially ARs and bolt action rifles. I do not recommend running an SMG with, say, a bolt action sniper rifle. It's a little bit too high risk, especially if you're just getting started. If you're dead set on using a bolt action sniper rifle, I recommend something like an M416, which is probably still one of the better guns in the game and is fairly easy to use. That should give you a handle on how recoil and bullet velocity works in this game. So it's just about good weapon synergy. And again, I've made plenty of videos if you want a more detailed explanation on those. Tip number 4 is going to be loot management, and this is the most important thing to work on when you're getting kills and to avoid being killed while looting, because it takes a little bit of time to get everything you need in this game, and that's an intentional feature, but there are ways to speed up your looting, and that is basically just prioritizing items. Now, when upon getting a kill, you can move around while you're looting, and I think that's very important, but you shouldn't worry too much about cherry picking every item, but taking the most important things. So this meaning meds, ammo, weapon attachments, and then grenades. And then changing armor if you need to is super important. Only take what you need as quickly as possible. If you missed some little attachment for a gun, don't sweat it too much because you might accidentally put yourself back at risk and end up dying for that compensator or something. So just get what you need and get moving. Tip number 3 is going to get in the habit of paying attention to the kill feed. And this, especially in the mid to late game, is going to serve you quite well. Now, the main priority to paying attention to the kill feed is to give you context clues on where enemies with particular weapons are. And this can give you a better envisionment of the battlefield in your mind. When you see some high priority weapons like a Mark 14 or an AUM on the battlefield, or maybe if you can hear that weapon at the same time as it's in the kill feed, you can pretty much pinpoint exactly where that enemy is and then put yourself in a position to better take them out. It's also important to pay attention when you're fighting somebody in the blue, because if they die to the zone, that's the only way you're going to know is if you look at the kill feed. Otherwise, you may be waiting for an enemy that's never going to come out, and then you could waste your own time, either end up dying to the blue or just getting picked off on your own. Paying attention to the kill feed will greatly increase your game sense and is a wonderful habit to get yourself into. Tip number 2 is going to be understanding when to swap armor. Now, when you're looting somebody else or looking at your own armor, your durability of that is going to be represented by a red bar, and the higher that red bar is, the less durability you have. Now, when a piece of armor is completely broken, such as a vest, it will maintain still on your body and will give you a slight damage reduction, but should probably be swapped out for a lower tier but fresh vest at some point. However, helmets are a little bit easier. You always want to have the higher tier helmet regardless of its durability. If you have a level 2 helmet that is completely almost shattered, it's better to keep that on than to swap down to a level 1 helmet. Vests, however, are a bit more nuanced. You want to really determine about how many more gunfights you expect, and that should guide your decision on whether you should swap to a lower tier vest or not. However, it's always better to have at least a broken vest than none at all. So keeping that in mind, just remember that helmets are a little bit easier to understand, but vests are something that you have to play around with a little bit. Finally, guys, coming in at tip number 1 is going to be selecting the appropriate attachments for your weapon. Now, this is going to vary depending on gun by gun and also just personal preference, but an important thing to keep in mind is that in terms of grips, your best options, especially as a new player, is to try and keep it simple by grabbing vertical grips or angled grips in terms of that weapon slot. You're also going to want extended mags for sure over quick draw, at least right now. And muzzle attachments, the flash hider is going to be a little bit for recoil control, but will more or less just hide the actual flash of your muzzle for your enemies. Suppressors will completely eliminate that flash, but won't give you as much recoil control, whereas compensators will not hide your flash whatsoever, but they give you the most recoil control. So it depends on really how you want to prioritize. If you want a weapon that has a lot of kick, consider running a vertical grip and a compensator that should, in theory, give you the most control. And you can do some playing around with attachments in the training mode if you want to understand a little bit how they work. And I've also made guides explaining in depth about what each attachment does. Easily though, the most important thing is just having the right tool for the job and using the appropriate attachments on a weapon. And just as a little bit of a bonus, one last tip I'm going to recommend is jump into team deathmatch and shoot around a little bit before your first game. This will do wonders for helping you warm up and just get a little bit acquainted with your muscle memory and everything, and just kind of refining your sensitivity, because especially if you're just getting started, your sensitivity might need a little bit of tuning and adjusting, and getting all of your controls right before you actually get started is super important, is actually the most basic thing you can do. TDM is a great way to condense that actual gunfighting and to give you a better grip on the fundamentals, making your experience in BR that much easier. But anyways, guys, those are going to be the top 10 tips that you can get started on right now if you're jumping into the game, and hopefully this did help you out. A lot of new players are jumping in on PlayStation. Whether you guys are brand new or you have been playing PUBG for a long time, I have plenty of other more advanced tips and tricks videos if you want to continue learning about this kind of stuff. I highly recommend checking out more of those videos, and if you do want to see more of these in the future, make sure to drop a like. That would be awesome. Subscribe, of course, if you are new to the channel as well, and if you guys want to go follow me over on Twitch, where I stream almost every day, if you want to just come say hello or anything like that, you can follow that. Links in the description down below. And one last thing, if you guys want to use my PUBG creator code, that will also be linked down below. You can log into your PUBG account and just add that on, and it helps out the channel a ton. Guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all on the next live stream or the next video. Take it easy, everybody, and peace out.